Monday, August 13th, 2012, at whatever time stamp you give us. Roll call and establish quorum, please.
Doug Ehrenberg.
Here.
Randy Yorkson. Neil Lurkey.
Here.
Dan Cole.
Here.
Jim Stibbs.
Here.
Sandy Smith. Here. Trey Bloom.
Here. And that report says that was all posted where it says on the bottom. Number 4 is board policy in service. Randy Yorkson, policy number 421, entrance age. And there's been a handout over the weekend. That must be the proposed policy.
Right, this is an existing policy that is in our policy book, and the administrative team took time to look at the first two, both 421 and 421.1, to just look at the verbiage of it. And in the entrance age, everything looks good as is, except for just the addition of the word "is" in that first paragraph, just to make it flow a little better through the process. I don't know, Kirk and Candy, if you had any comments on they're primarily the ones that reviewed these two policies. No change to this one. Okay, and this is needed, as always. It's a needed policy for our district, talking about the age appropriateness for children to come to school.
Any exceptions ever made?
I haven't been aware of any since my time.
Meaning somebody comes in.
You mean before early entrance? I haven't done any applications.
And then there's a little bit of blue lettering that's been added and a couple deleted, is that right?
Correct, on the 421.1, item D.
Well, that's actually the next item, okay.
Yep, the next item, that, yes, the two words were struck through stability and mental maturity. We feel that the verbiage that exists without those two items still meets our need and allows for the understanding of the verbiage. And then down under the final paragraph, under title of kindergarten, again, making that flow as up above the letter D, where the mental academic, mental has been removed and it just says academic maturity for that piece. On the second page in the application, or excuse me, the third page of the application for early entrance, seeing that it does address kindergarten and first grade, including grade 1 up on the top. And then again in the top third, with the first full paragraph adding the first grade and clarifying what the ages mean. Kindergarten grade 5, first grade grade 6, before September 1 of that school year. So it just gives a little more detail, and I would say user friendly for a person that being utilized. No significant changes other than that.
Comments from the board?
If they hold them back, that's okay.
If the classroom teacher, the school makes a recommendation, or the teacher, or the parents?
Let's say they're born in August, right on the pulpit.
Sure. Well, that's the parents' discretion to, if they choose to enroll before that.
Is parents' discretion to hold them back? Is there a limit?
You read the article in Post Crescent? Yeah, right. So did I. I don't know if we've ever had that.
So they could be 20 as a senior.
You can't, what's worse, they can't
Oh,
do that.
right.
If it's to enhance their potential athletic opportunities, WIA says when a student enters their, whatever year it is at the age of 18, they're done. And so I guess the fine line there.
Any questions? So I'm assuming in 2 weeks we'll see this as an approval item at the regular board
Revised
meeting.
revision, if you will.
Does that handle A and B for everybody? We'll go to C.
Okay, item C is the farm to school policy, and this is something that has evolved from our nutrition committee through Sandy and I and a number of staff that are part of that. And in the past, the district has sought different grants, benefits through the state, through the federal government, And to access some of these resources, the districts, if they recognize a resolution that talks about the district and its willingness to utilize locally grown produce, bringing it into the school, it enhances the ability for us to go after these types of resources. The Farm to School resolution, which you have in front of you, is something very simple, but yet it meets that qualification. It just simply states that the district will make efforts to use locally grown foods, amongst the area. We put in the radius of 20 miles from within our district. Start going beyond that, is it efficient and cost effective to bring in locally grown foods? Might be a slight question of that, but this is, I guess, one of the housekeeping pieces for the nutrition committee to move forward with some potential opportunities. I don't know if I missed anything, Sandy, with that.
What are we doing now without this?
What are we doing now? The nutrition committee works with the UW Extension and other area groups, local groups, to promote health and wellness. I know we do some local buying in the fall of produce, primarily apples and that type of thing. It just states to the higher powers than us that the district recognizes this is a viable means to bring quality food and resources to our district locally. That's the sense of it.
I guess I don't understand the need for this. I'm assuming we can do it without this.
We can do it without it, but to access grants and program opportunities through one would be through like the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They need to have the support that the school backs farm to use.
This is needed for some other people that may have dollars.
Exactly.
That's exactly
Okay.
my understanding of it,
And the last wordy paragraph has a blank line. What do we anticipate to have in there? Report back by.
Well, that's to be determined. If the board sees fit that every 6 months you want to report back to know.
You're not looking for a calendar date. You're looking for some kind of revolving date that every 6 months or 3
Giving
months.
up a potential update to the district. This is off of a model policy that districts develop and support and put out
You could just put yearly.
annually.
Then it goes on to say required for implementation. To me, does that mean it's not implemented until that date is met? I can understand an ongoing report, but, well,
My understanding is it's needed if they want to write a grant.
Yeah,
That's
that's
was
right.
my
You're
understanding.
never really gonna,
Yeah.
you're not gonna have 20 different vendors coming in here giving beans. That's not gonna happen.
I guess I'm questioning why you need those last 6 words. And next steps required for implementation. What purpose do they serve?
Well, the board has the ability to tweak and turn this, to their own
That's my question.
own liking.
What are those 6 words doing in there?
You can always change it.
Change it.
But implementation, in my definition, would mean that you need to do this before you start. And I don't know that you want that handcuff on there. that
What if
say-
you just said the superintendent is directed to report back annually on their farm to school initiative?
On the plan,
Basically, I read it as you're gonna look at it every year.
Yeah.
the word establish and the word implementation to me
Take that out.
led me to believe that you're not gonna do anything until a certain time, certain, that
Why don't
language.
you just take that out, Scott?
Okay.
So that bottom paragraph, please. If you're gonna implement it, when do you wanna implement it? At a certain time frame, or you wanna do it ASP? I don't know. As soon as possible.
To report annually on their farm to school initiative period.
Okay.
You could just date it every year. You're gonna have to date it. You're gonna have to.
You're gonna report back every year and just tell us how it's working out.
What type of activities and programs?
Yeah,
been,
farm to school initiative.
looked into and or implemented?
The superintendent is directed to report back annually on their farm to school initiative.
If establish and implementation, I don't understand how that
Just take that.
is justified.
On their farm to school initiative. That makes-
So, spend some time to massage that. I don't see the purpose for establishing implementation.
That makes it easy.
You guys can be the wordsmith for that. Be easier for you to say yes. Anything else on that one?
I'm just wondering, what are we doing now?
We work with the UW Extension where they come in and do healthy snack initiatives within the elementary school, I know Kirk with the revolving kitchen that goes from classroom to classroom. You remember, I don't remember the name of that person from the county.
I don't either.
But she's been actively involved primarily in the elementary school, and I know that she brought this forward as an initiative to potentially even enhance potentially more of what she could do.
My
So
understanding
something like
there's
this
two
exists.
different people.
What's that?
Isn't there another person that comes from the county?
He's not with them. It's,
Right.
She comes from the county?
Bouchard. Which one is the?
One's from the county and one's from the other.
Right.
No, from Weyauwega.
And they've done things like ask kids their favorite menus. They try to get the hot lunch personnel involved too.
Right. I think they had, one of the ideas they were talking about from this outside resource was having a family cooking night, you know, where you bring the whole family in and make a dinner together, you know, and it would be led with that person for the instruction.
I know they do orchard.
Right, that's basically, from what I've, that has been the only resource that we've utilized thus far, I believe. Can't say they've ever explored that to see if it would be, like a surplus option. See, a lot of the cheese, comes through the commodities program that's in there. I know at one time they did have cheese curds, and I think those came locally for a while, kind of as a, we're gonna try it out type of thing.
I was reading that while you guys talked. If you're the note taker there, Scott, the last paragraph, therefore be it finally resolved, the superintendent is directed to report back to the board, and then I've crossed out the word by. And I don't know if you want to get started annually, or you want to start quarterly. The blank, I got quarterly written on mine until we understand what's going on, if you want to. On the plan, period, is what I have read myself. If that meets anybody's,
Instead of plan, you could put farm to school initiative, then you have the name on it.
okay,
Big deal.
and then just cross out until it gets to farm and school initiative. And then cross out plan to establish the district. It'll be quarterly on the farm to school initiative, period.
Make it simple.
Yeah, that's fine.
It takes
I
a
guess
few more
that-
minutes sometimes to think through that.
Yeah, absolutely. I would start out with annually and let us dive into this and see what we can develop to, create some conversation points and potential activities. And annually, I guess, would mean, in my mind, by the end of the next school year, because you're going to actively know what we have done this past school year. So, yeah, well, we can incorporate that to the board annually, the school, or farm to school initiative.
Any other questions, comments? Word D, 4D is purchasing policy number, whatever that is, 672 and 672.1.
Okay, this was asked to be brought up as a committee agenda item. It stems, I guess, in my opinion, from a couple of items. Most recently, the computer bids that were put forth at the July committee meeting, and then where we looked to approve them on at the July board meeting. And it didn't move through that process in the sense that the state bid came in a few $100s less than one of the sealed bids that was recognized for recommendation that evening. Spent a little time looking at this today, chatting with Mr. Lurkey about what we currently have and how we currently know it and how it works thus far. And I guess maybe I'll start out with this question. What does the board creates this policy, and what is the intent, I guess, that the board's looking for with a purchasing policy? What would
I don't think anyone on the board brought this to the board.
No, I said that we brought forward.
I think the administration brought this board, and I don't know for certain, but I believe it was so there was freedom under $5,000. Unbeknownst or not thought through that it gave 3 bid requirements for over $10,000. That has been not well done. And there's schools that have this, and I guess, has anyone talked to these schools and asked them, how has it evolved in their districts? Are they living with this 3 bid requirement over $10,000, and how's it working out for them? I think our district has had trouble at the over $10,000 3 bid things, mainly because of lack of experience on doing the 3 bids. And the timing it might take to do that, and if the state can or can't meet those timings. In this case, do you take the state bid? Did they send a bid here before they knew the other ones? Is that clean enough to take the state's bid on that particular computer thing? You know, and get into the roofing issue and other items on bidding. I myself love this this bidding procedure when it came through. I was reluctant to give total freedom on 5,000 and under, but I understand it's the low end of peanuts. And 3 bids on over 10,000 taxpayers' money, I thought was a wonderful idea. And I would be very reluctant to change that concept. I think we need to continue to evolve into how to do that correctly.
Sure.
That's my opinion.
Okay.
This
Okay.
is the one we have in place right now, so.
This is the current one that's in place, right?
I think we just put in the bid waiver. That was just implemented this year.
With the curriculum, the books.
The 2/3 bid waiver is,
672-1-1.
yep, that's in there,
I
right?
know that's in there, but we just put that in there to take care of any, like when you buy books and stuff like that.
Well, this is the original one, right? This was in the.
We've exercised that bid waiver
Yeah,
on
yeah.
occasion.
Then we act on
So
those
we
types.
have, there is a way.
There is a process,
There is a
correct.
process, so I
Right.
guess I don't see any problem. I mean, we didn't have that process before.
Prior, right.
So now, that kind of took care of, like, taking care of the books and stuff where there's only 1 or 2 vendors.
Sure. I guess,
So
what would we
I
be
thought we
looking?
took care of it kind of then, by doing that. I don't,
I think it's beneficial to identify what those areas might be then. You know, if it's the technology piece or the textbook area, or is it the board's desire for the administration or myself to bring forward seeking that 2/3 bid, just saying, okay, we got textbooks, an option coming up. We're requesting a 2/3 bid or a 2/3 approval to waive that process. I mean, if that's the process you'd like to see implemented, we can take on that approach to it.
Is there a problem doing that? It seems like it makes sense. What do I know?
You know,
I mean, as long as you're clear on it.
Right.
We're
that
clear.
worked. I thought that kind of took care of that problem.
We could have done that for the computers.
We could.
Wow.
But we.
You gotta watch out,
for the
because
senior
when
bid.
you're using public money, you have to, you know,
But if they have, if.
That's my
Can
only
explain to us why
Yeah.
you know, we might have waived it. Is what she's
but I
saying.
think but the state thing, I don't think the guy that usually did it was there.
The person was on vacation.
Was on vacation, so
Right.
that's why we didn't get that.
So my question is, would have it been improved by a longer bidding system? In other words, let the state know, instead of 1 week at a time, 6 weeks at a time, on such and such a date. It might have changed on, if we evolve on how to do 3 bids,
Try to.
including the state in that. They can do that. They just missed it this time because maybe short time. Maybe the bid request wasn't conducive to their participating. I don't know.
I think there's some valid points with Tony's talking points on, especially in the technology piece of maybe the reluctancy of companies wanting to put the bid out there, hard copy. I don't know your opinion on that, if you feel it jeopardizes the process where we may not get that best bid if they know, or a bid, if they know they're not gonna be able to compete in those settings, or we just roll the dice and who presents is who we have, I guess.
But then we have to be consistent. We
Yeah,
can't
you
go
can't
back and
jump.
forth 100 times just because we don't like.
I think we'll have an issue tonight. Bandy. I mean, how many people deal with bandy? So you might have to ask for a waiver on that.
Okay.
So I think if you do your homework, you could ask for it
Okay.
beforehand.
All right, so you Dan is saying that he would like to see the request for 2/3 approval in advance of
So you think
something coming forward.
Like with the books, but there's only sometimes only one or two people that handle it.
That's correct.
So to be clear, so everybody's clear, when you came with the bid, would you have liked her to let us know before she would put out the books, I'm probably only gonna come with one bid here? Is that what you're saying? Would you have wanted to know?
I
sooner?
don't, I've been
Well, I
through
mean,
this
we
before,
knew
so
it
I
was
kinda
obvious, but
know.
we know it, but
There is only a few.
let's give them a clear path here with, okay, you're going to order something in 3 months, let us know.
Yeah, because sometimes cheaper isn't always better.
And I think as far as the textbooks addressing that,
Yeah, that's given.
we may bring, looking for the 2/3 majority vote in the month of November. You know, and the end result of actually presenting the recommendation may come in the month of May or
That's
April,
fine.
because there's that time that's needed to investigate. So the request for the majority vote, in some cases, may be substantially long before, or a month before prior, depending on the nature of the
I
item.
don't think that's, the sooner you have it, the more secure you feel. So as soon as you know there's a problem, great.
So, we'll make it fast.
Right, Mike?
Well,
And when you use the public money, you could really run into.
yeah, but there's some that aren't, it's with education, you're not.
I guess a little homework on whatever district this came from, how are they doing? Do they have the same issues with the curriculum in the books? How, do they always have to go around that, you know, get voted on it? Or say, no, they figured out a way to get 3 or 4 bids? You know, I think some homework, whoever's got this policy, how is it evolved?
This is a product of, I think, 3 different policies. All right, one was in Iowa, Weyauwega, and I believe the Westby School District. And went through it, and that's how this policy was.
I know if I turn back in my pile of stuff, there we'd have those,
You'd find it.
we'd have all those policies.
Yeah, that's where they're
I don't think I could find it, you know.
I went through it today.
And where do you think most of this came from?
Weyauwega, Iowa, and Westby, I believe.
West, BY? West?
Westby, yeah. You know, and I took down to review the sample policies that we looked at when this was developed. And just to reiterate, anywhere from board approval, as you said, mentioned, Neil, from 3,000 to 5,000, the Madison School District, the district administrator or designee had up to like 15,000. Up in the Medford School District, notification of the board at 100,000. So it varies from board to board. I would say between that $10,000 and $25,000 mark is probably the average where.
Some school districts work with a way bigger budget. You know, at $100 million budgets.
But I don't think that little town we mentioned. does.
Medford, no.
Medford's not.
They're our size, maybe a little larger, probably a little larger, but they're relatively close. So I'm hearing no changes or recommendations then at this time, is that correct?
Did anybody ask you, did you have some recommendations?
Did you ever?
Did you live?
Do I? If anything, upping the amount we're gonna do our diligence on the 3 bids, but bringing it to the board for the sealed bid approval, I think that, you know, upwards of 20,000 would be feasible, you know, allow us to do the work and get those bids internally and then bring it to the board for recommendation, you know, informing throughout the way. But the sealed bid procedure, I don't know if it's necessarily needed at that mark. The one item or a couple other items that I thought about as well, any type of capital project, okay, like our roofing project, so that when we decide to go forward with our next series of roof revamps, you know, how do we look at that? If it's over $100,000, do you bring in a consultant to manage the process and give the feedback and develop the RFP? Because that didn't happen this last time, and you know, we all walked through that process how we know it. Wasn't as efficient as anyone would want it, I would assume, but I think there's some language like that could be put in. Otherwise, we hypothetically could be right back into those that same threshold again. So that's something to potentially consider. you have a project of over, $100,000, you're bringing somebody out from the outside in to consult, manage.
Maybe you could look and see if there's some policies like that.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
It saves a lot of headaches.
Sure.
Not a dime.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, this isn't my realm of expertise, let's have a consultant on this. There's nothing
Right,
wrong with that.
and that's, I think everyone at this table here would agree with that as well. But then, looking at what that number or threshold is to where you bring a consultant in and know that it's gonna come with a price tag, that's just part of the project price then, when we go forward.
And I'm not sure it needs a dollar figure or who's got what level of expertise.
Yeah, that's why I said, a
It
capital
might not be a
project.
dollar threshold, it might be the uniqueness of what's happening,
Potentially.
and not put a dollar.
What else did I have? The sealed bids I mentioned at a higher threshold number, over that $10,000 mark. The textbooks we talked about, potentially having a 2/3 majority vote to look at that. Technology, again, I guess time will be the two-shell factor if we are getting the bids that we would normally get if we just go sealed bids. And then if the state hypothetically carries out its own RFP process for a product, let's say the computers that we have typically got, does that meet the needs of the board, knowing that they've done their homework to secure the best pricing? And if that is our best option, could that potentially waive the bidding procedure? I guess that's a couple ideas.
Who knows how long that will be?
Yeah.
True.
I mean, it's a mess now, we're all, they don't know what the sky was going to do. We just raised it, though. We raised it from 5 to 10. Right? Within the last year. I think we did it when we raised that when we did 2/3.
Yeah, nothing existed prior to this. As far as, I think it was more of a, kind of a,
$5,000. So for now, I think we should just keep it. But I mean, the capital things, like you said, it's over 100. I agree with hiring somebody. It saves a lot of time.
I have to say, I sort of agree, put a price on that, it could be something nobody has expertise in.
But if it's something we have, there's a phenomenal expertise in it, what I mean? Don't force the consultant because of a dollar figure. That's not the connection I would have. Consult when needed, and I think that would probably an open check, right? If the administrator,
We're going to get the same, we're going to be the same as we did.
Yeah, you're right, no matter what we do, we're not gonna be a problem.
and I think potentially putting a dollar sign next to like capital projects might be of best interest.
Yes.
Settling on what that number is, it's the board's discretion. I guess you look at our elementary project we're involved in right now, and everybody's knowledgeable of what we're investing into that. For discussion.
I personally don't see any changes needed in that 672 or 672.1. I think there's ways for this to evolve workable. If there's a consultant needed, I think that might be a different issue. Whether it's a dollar sign or some level of expertise that's needed for consultant, would that be in here, or would that be a separate issue? Different policy?
I
Or
think it
combined?
would find its way into somewhere in the verbiage here of into the purchasing policy, the first page. But I could look to see if there are some other districts that have
Oh, they have.
language on when a consultant is brought in.
That would be helpful. We probably don't need to reinvent that wheel. There's probably somebody.
Because then we could consult and we'll do it. It's true. You gotta put your trust in it.
All right.
So what's decided here?
He's going to look into some wording
Okay.
on the capital project. Is that what you understood, Bill?
And I think if you could comment, I think you want to do the 2/3. I think that should.
Yeah, that's already exists.
Okay, so a little more information on potentially some type of threshold that requires consulting. WASB resolution.
Do you want me to talk?
Go ahead.
Okay.
I can add what I've got here, but go ahead and tell me where you're at
Sorry.
first.
If you turn to this sheet here,
All page 20, but it's the second sheet.
and look under 3.24A, 4K open enrollment. See that there? Okay, so they already have a proposal. However, I talked to Dan Rossman, and he was gonna get back to me, he hasn't yet. But, he wasn't sure just what had been done about it. And there is reluctance to tinker with it, and he mentioned, and I've heard this man speak, so I believe this is probably where Glenn Roseman doesn't approve of four-year renewal, and thinks it's just babysitting, and he's on that committee. I would think Bolton would be on it, if he's the head of the education. So anyway, he was gonna get back to me. It doesn't look like we need a resolution, because actually one is here, in place. It's just, he doesn't know what they've ever done about it, and he was gonna get back to me, what to do there now.
That's about what I had, was that I have been volunteer appointed, whatever you call it, to this resolution thing again this year. So I'll be watching all this
Good.
and change it if we want to change it.
And when he
But
gets
there's a
back, I'll
procedure if you
email
want to
you.
change it.
But
So
this is,
if you're, I assume this might meet what your request
it
was.
does, to me, it does, yeah.
And I also think that these marching orders were given in '07,
Yeah, I don't think.
and I don't think they've marched real well. Dan Rossmiller is our lobbyist in Madison,
I think it was put on the back burner.
and it just never got to the top. So if you tweak a word or two, it would get all rehashed to get the resolution committee. You have to use whole choose.
He's gonna get back to me.
Right.
I had plenty to say to him.
Okay?
How much do we pay for dues a year? I'll say that to him when he calls me back. No, I expressed my real, that this is a priority issue, because we have kids coming here, whose siblings are coming here, but they can't come to the 4K program, and we know they're going to open enrollment. And
And the other place in this resolution book is on page 9.
is that on one of our things?
I don't know. I'm in the resolution book that just came in the mail
Oh, okay,
for board presidents and.
I don't know if I saw it. Go ahead. Lou. What is that?
It's under equalization aid, 2.2, ABC equals to K. Permanent funding for 4K kindergarten. The WASB supports permanent funding for 4K kindergarten. That was done in '02. That was the only other place that I searched through this to find where it touched on anything for 4K.
Well, there was talk at one time of doing away with the funding.
So-
I haven't heard it recently, but
So I think they supported
They
that,
support it, yeah.
and that's been 10 years already.
well, what it is, what this says, like if we would get a WPACA student, WPACA shouldn't have to pay it if they're not able to get the aid for it, because they don't have a 4K program. But they would have to change the formula so that we would get it directly, even though it's an open enrollment student, right?
Does anybody know why WPACA doesn't have 4K?
I thought they
Because
did.
they have hockey,
I thought
they only,
only if the kid needs.
special needs. But 4K is not that, 4K is like any class.
I see a smile over there. Why doesn't WPACA have 4K?
They
I was laughing at what Sandy said, yeah, hockey.
they have
Oh, okay.
hockey.
They got hockey.
See, this is
I
what
don't know why
upsets
they
me.
don't.
Our kids
My
go there
guess is
because they
rules.
have hockey.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was a space thing or a philosophy that
Well,
is
they're
babysitting, you know,
They're trying
something.
to convince, do you know why, Adrian?
How's that?
Do you know why they don't have it in Weyauwega?
I don't know why they don't.
Okay.
It's one of the standouts in the area, isn't it? That doesn't have 4K? Who doesn't know? Who else doesn't have 4K?
Does Appleton have?
Appleton, Appleton does not, I don't.
But all the small schools around here have it now that I know.
And was it done in order to increase enrollment? Was that what, help counteract the decline in enrollment?
Not in Weyauwega. It was done because there was a need for it.
Okay.
It was done because there was a need for it. If you guys
And-
voted for it for another reason, don't tell me about it, because I know why I had it. I could, except I'd be telling something confidentiality, but I had a personal experience with a student that I knew we needed 4K.
we were not reaching.
Right, I think there was some people who had a personal need for the student, and some was because of those dollar signs that came in when you did that.
I'm gonna tell you, it wasn't on the administrative side.
The bigger districts have difficulty with logistics because you either have to offer full days for 2 days,
Busing
2 days
issues.
a week, or half days,
Spade.
or 4 days a week. But plus then you have to have the outreach piece that you have here also. It's logistically.
As far as I know, it's worked out well for our days. Is there any downside to it?
It's been about,
See, New London, what they do, they actually have a daycare center,
right.
which could be done.
And
Well,
does
no.
the daycare, does
No,
the money
but-
follow to the daycare then?
No, the teacher goes, the
Okay.
teacher from the public school
Okay.
goes to the daycare and teaches there, right? But it is, I imagine Appleton, to find room for all those classrooms would be much more difficult than it was for us.
Okay, so our agenda has the WASB resolution, and you're comfortable that this is,
I am, because
Any-
they're
your
not gonna
thoughts?
do a new one anymore, they're gonna have to push this one, and I will let them know.
well, then maybe they need a prop.
They need a prod, I will prod him.
Okay.
When do you meet again with that committee, or do you have any sessions this summer with them, or in the last year?
I'm gonna take a stab in November.
November?
It's on my email, but I didn't pay much attention to it. They'll send me stuff when it gets real close as a reminder, so I was just gonna wait for that.
Okay.
But
Well-
within the last 2 weeks, last week probably, they've sent me the schedule where it's gonna be. The first one's in Neenah, I know, and then there was a response as well, it's fortunate, Mary Jansen.
Sure.
So it's fortunate it's gonna be close for us.
Right.
There was an email. I don't remember the dates.
I would think, you know, if any people personally want to write to Senator Olson, because he's the head of, he was, or is he still the head of the education committee? As far as I know, he was. But this Grossman, yeah, I've heard.
Don't let him know what he called
No.
me.
Olson? Grossman is from, where's he from? I've heard of him. One of the bigger cities.
Okay, so if you're,
Grossman.
so no action, don't anticipate anything there except maybe if you want a phone call,
What do
the
you?
process here. Ward 5, curriculum improvement, student welfare, Tony, high school band uniforms.
Okay, this is a topic that we had a presentation, I guess, well over a year ago on an initiative by the band director at the time to update our marching uniforms. And this past summer, we were able to hire Mr. Andrew Schmidt as our new band instructor in the middle school and high school.
Welcome to our.
Schmidt's formerly from the Hortonville School District, 13 years of experience.
Yep.
At Hortonville, brings a very nice resume of accomplishments, directing bands, plays, drama, so on and so forth. It's going to be a great asset to our district. Mr. Wilbert and I talked to Mr. Schmidt about the idea of where we left off with the uniforms and him walking into where he is now. And if you remember, we were going to do this in phases. And the first phase was to look at the trousers that were to be purchased, and they have been. And on the far left, the trousers with the red and white stripe going down, we currently have them in-house. Okay? And our next task at hand is to look at the concert wear as well as the overlay, which is utilized when the band performs primarily in the parade setting or the halftime program. I'm going to let Mr. Wilbert and Andrew just maybe talk a little bit about the finer points of the uniforms. Why don't you just highlight, Andy,
Sure.
some of the discrepancies that you see and where we're at?
Okay, yeah. First of all, I want to take this opportunity to thank you for giving me a chance to work here. I'm really excited to be in the school district, and I got to work with the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders already. I met quite a few of the high schoolers that have been coming in, and some parents and a lot of staff. And so far, so good. I'm really excited for the school year, so thank you for that opportunity. I really appreciate that. I'll definitely do my best to keep your respect with that. And again, thank you for taking the opportunity to field this issue. I know it's not always a good time when somebody's asking for money for things, but I'll kind of get to what's going on. I don't have all the information as far as specifically how old the band some of them, especially some of the older ones, probably have been, I'm guessing, 25, could be 30.
82, I think it was.
Okay, so it's, I don't know why. And that's really about the expected lifespan of band uniforms. Which actually isn't too bad, a 25 to 30 year investment. Some of the uniforms, as you can see, they do have a lot of stains and things like that that are just not really dry cleanable. They're kind of just past that. So at some point, they just kind of can't clean out some of this stuff. The other parts that are tricky are there's a lot of them that are held together with safety pins, things like that. Buttons are off, and then of course this part here, which I know you guys are
They crawl now.
concerned about and trying to deal with that. Right now in our inventory, we have 71 overlays, and 43 of them have the Indian, which puts 28 that don't.
We don't use that.
We have to.
Some.
Yeah, right now we've got about 50 kids in high school band. There's a little bit more, I don't know the exact numbers. But so if we have 28 without, that still leaves us, with a minimum of 22 kids that have to wear this. That's a great question. I mean, that's one thing we can talk about. One of the questions also was, can we take it off? We probably could, but then the underside is going to be considerably lighter.
I just don't remember seeing it. So you put them in the middle or something.
Being my first year, I'm not sure. Maybe Trey, you can help me out with that. They're just there.
Yeah, the Indians were just kind of sporadically given to whoever would pick it up, so I thought we got it.
We did have an idea for a homecoming, and just known to say pretty much everybody here. Since we're doing superheroes as our thing, to maybe have a cape or something like that. Wouldn't really help us out for like the Christmas parade or something like that, but just as a, goes with the theme, but we can talk about that.
That has been a topic for some time, but
Yeah.
it seems like the dust is settling on that right now.
It may have, it's
Yeah.
the last,
The dust seems to have settled.
You might have one person see this.
All you gotta do is have one person see it,
That's
and
right.
it's a lawsuit.
to my knowledge, and anyone can chime in here on this, I think as far as uniforms, whether it be at athletic competitions or co-curricular venues, that is probably the last item of clothing that we have that has that image on it. The WF on the far left, that
That's
most
the new
WF,
one, right?
that's what we know for the vast majority of our logos and icons. And we see that everywhere, and that was 10, 12 years ago, we started moving in that direction.
If you bought new uniform, would you start with the overlays?
Could you start with the overlays?
Yeah.
I
I mean, they go on any uniform?
Pretty much, I guess they're
Or
a slightly
if you
different.
bought overlays, would you end up having
That's a great question. I think with how the coats are, these have got this vesty piece that actually buttons into the inside, and you actually have to wear like a collared shirt underneath it, I believe, even with the overlay. Is that correct? Or can you just wear like a
Yeah, we just know there, just so they.
Okay. With this, and one of the reasons I really like this design is that for the concert attire part of it, you don't need any of the bow tie or cummerbund or that other sash that goes across the top, because it's a nice military style, with the red, stripe on the pants and all that kind of stuff. It's going to look really nice on stage as a concert uniform. You don't need all the other stuff with it. I don't know how well it would work specifically.
Do we have some of these? Or?
This is the only one we have. This is their demo.
That's the sample that
The demo.
Yeah.
they've worked on to develop as a potential.
Yeah.
But the overlays we have?
No, we
No, we don't
this is
have
the only
those
one of
either.
this. Yeah, this is our proposal. Yeah.
We have the trousers that are on the chair.
Yeah,
We have half of the uniform.
Yeah.
We bought something.
Yeah.
We bought the trousers.
Yeah. So there's 75 of these.
And that was with the fundraising money, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that was to help to donate the activity account
Yeah.
made a donation to the
district
To the district.
for the
and
purchase of
they purchase.
the trousers.
And this,
Right.
this is what the back part looks like, so it's kind of just coming and going.
I guess I'm at the point of looking at this process, and now it's taken a couple of seasons or a couple of years to be where we are at, and looking at other, whether it be co-curriculars or activities or whatnot, where the district supports the purchase of the uniforms for the students to participate. I'd be recommending that the board considers purchasing outright the colorways and the concert jackets to support our band program. The draft example you have in your materials was from Dumoulin, and that's the sample that Andy has on the side there. There are a few vendors that we looked at. I believe there was one other one that.
Stansberry. Yeah.
Okay, and was there a third one?
I didn't have one, but I mean there are other companies that do similar things.
Right.
The one that we have, the Stansberry one, was a little bit more like this, where there was more pieces to it, so it was actually a little bit more expensive.
Sure.
And this I like I said, because off with the overlay and you're all set. One piece, you know, you don't need the bow tie, you don't need, you know, a specific dress shirt underneath, you don't need a cummerbund, you don't need a sash, because all of those things, you know, start adding up pretty quickly as far as, you know, cost of the uniform going. I mean, I like that nice uniform all together, the red and black together. So.
Who chose the black stripe over the red stripe?
This part, I think Andrea designed this part.
These are
Probably
guys-
Mr. O'Donnell.
I mean,
Mr.
this
O'Donnell.
over.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Oh, okay. So this
Yeah.
is okay. Yeah.
I don't, I just wondered who made the call?
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure we could tweak a little bit because they've got the representative from Des Moines said that he could. They did a measurement previously. He said he could come out and remeasure. Although a lot of it, you know, they have like a set of sizes that they're going to have. But I'm sure if we wanted to, you know, swipe this out for red, big stripe, black, small stripe, or something like that, that would, you know, they haven't set anything up except for this right here. Or
Is
something like that.
there a uniform committee for the band that would make those decisions? rather than-
I think at this
There's
point,
band people maybe, and some
Yeah.
information people.
There was,
the
with
band
that,
director?
I know there was a couple parents involved last year,
Okay.
Andrea, and some boosters that
okay,
had a couple meetings on that,
okay, that's good.
yeah.
And is that set in stone, or should that be resurrected and tweaked again?
I think it was set in stone because people were specifically looking at an item that they were fundraising for. I do believe that they very much like
This
At that time, they were looking the entire left chair there, but we just got the fan so far.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct,
But their plan was to continue with the left chair
yes.
in stone. Okay.
Did you,
We don't have to go back to that one.
Sandhill, we could hold it.
Yeah.
on your letter, on somewhere,
We got a band guy in the end?
Yep.
yes.
There's your.
It's actually a drum major, yeah.
What's your thought? Do they go for that Indian, or don't they, if they have a choice when they go to the locker room?
I don't know, so it doesn't really matter, just grab it, make sure it fits.
Okay, so it's not a desirable or undesirable thing.
It's just a point that,
But I do know a couple of my friends already said they like the black better, so.
Okay. Sandy, I interrupted.
no, I was just saying, you were saying this is a different kind of material that wouldn't be as warm, or it would be more breathable or something?
Oh, I believe.
Jack dry or?
Yeah.
It allows for more breathing.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. As
I always
opposed to
feel
the.
sorry for these kids when they're marching on the hot.
Yeah, it's kind of tough because you have to think about, okay, they're also marching, there's a couple of Christmas time things, so it's potential for
Yeah.
pretty cold weather, but also potential for pretty warm weather. Fortunately, you can put more stuff on underneath, and especially with Under Armour types of things, you can really kind of pack a lot underneath the uniform, but you can only go so far when it's warm.
And then
So
I think it also said it was rain. It worked well
I
in rain.
believe so, yeah, it's got more of a weather resistant.
Dry fast, okay.
It's part of the wall and it'll dry fast.
Okay. Does it shrink, does it?
What are you gonna do about the bid?
But what?
Bid.
If the board, this is my understanding from our conversation, if the board would choose to say, yes, we're gonna go towards finishing up that uniform, and ask for 3 bids, it's probably doable.
It is.
That this is just an example to get the topic talking about.
This is the one that the group had, we were able to move on it prior. This is the I'm almost positive I have a form that has 3 bids from 3 companies, with this one being the item
And
recognized.
they're probably a year old. or
Yep,
more.
it's
So
over a year
there's
old.
those 3 and maybe others, I don't know, to freshen them up.
But are we asking for the same thing?
I don't know.
Or are we back to the roof?
I don't know.
Are all 3 of them gonna be able to have a design like that? You don't know.
Probably close. Every company does things a little bit differently.
I like that, I think.
Yeah. Like I say, we also do have the Stansbury
Yeah,
top,
that,
but
I
had way
remember
more pieces and all that kind
That
of stuff.
had more pieces, and the actual WF had a little different look.
Yeah, it wasn't quite
Right.
quite the same, and
Exactly.
this is actually larger, I think.
Yeah.
too.
Well, we have the right to use it, we refuse it, we can't.
Well, this is one comment I gotta throw. I have children both in band and in drama,
Yeah.
and drama doesn't get uniforms or the dollars into their needs like band, football, track, and all the rest of it. And I've always wondered why.
Should have a boosters club.
But you're talking the top of this is not gonna be a booster cup cost.
No.
All right, so we have other activities in the school district that don't seem to have the same funding going towards it, like drama.
The one thing was, I was never in a band, so I'll start out clearly that. It does represent our school when it's off the public.
I'm not saying this is wrong. What I'm saying is it fair? That's my question.
Well, fair, you know,
Well,
like noise
I
fair.
can tell you this, after the band uniforms, maybe Mrs. Grimm will be coming in for gowns next month, and you're going to see that.
That's why I'm worried about opening the hornet's nest.
And
Well,
boots are
if
coming
you've
out.
got the money.
Our gowns are over 30 years old in the
Well,
chorus
then
department.
that might
When's
be
the last
something
time they were dry?
But because I have children involved, and I hear from
I
these
don't
people
think they
and
were
from those people,
from last year.
there's a
to
fairness
this,
question being,
because I think the
Yeah,
assumption
rumbles
was
in the back
this
all
was
the time.
gonna happen. But I believe they've been yearly.
Annually,
Right,
correct.
annually.
Right.
so this isn't always the end of uniform, which is true all the time. It never ends.
It's ongoing, it
It
doesn't
never
end, it's just like your wardrobe at home.
If we could pull 25 years out of the next set of band uniforms, I think that would be tremendous. I don't know if any of us will be here, but that would be tremendous.
Okay, what's the board's desire?
Go ahead.
Well, first of all, is this in the budget at all? or-
We would be able to find it within our budget to meet roundabouts, 14,000, depending on where we come in.
And I think
Is the booster club done, or are they willing to match something yet?
a lot of those kids are in chorus too, aren't they? They're trying to make money for that.
I think the Booster Club, they haven't given up their efforts. They don't, I think it was 6,000 or 7,000 for the pants.
7,500 for the pants.
Okay, and I know that this next year, potentially could be a year where the group goes to a New York or a Washington DC, and those funds could be utilized for that potentially as well.
They made it America?
Let's
So.
make-
Did they make
Yep,
it?
made in USA by Workers United,
There you go.
Union Labor. So there you go.
Hey, no sweat.
It probably means they pressed them.
Okay, I won't.
Randy?
I guess I'm all right with it.
Is there a dollar limit? Do you want 3 bids? What's your thought?
I think they went through that process here a year ago.
Okay.
There wasn't sealed bids on there. I guess I wanted to look at sealed bids.
What's your thoughts?
I'm all for it. My daughter would give me a big hug if I give her them.
That's right. Sandy?
I'm for it. They're
Dre?
representative.
Yeah, I'm definitely for it. After 4 years of being a band, when you have needles and stuff freaking you all the time, so.
Safety pin.
Safety pins, it'd be nice to have something about safety.
So could we recognize, whether it's appropriate here or not, or at the August meeting, just a 2/3 vote that, following our bidding procedure, because this will come in over $10,000.
Put both bids
How did
on.
this compare to the other bidders?
I believe this, don't quote me on it, but I believe this was the lesser of the prices.
So put
Okay.
both items on the agenda.
What's that?
Put both items on the agenda, to waive the 2/3 plus the.
Okay.
approve it on the same night.
Yes, or
Right,
do you want that stretched over?
no. I,
And we can discuss that here openly, however you feel.
I say go for them both, let's get over with.
How long does it take to get it?
30 days.
If we order, like, very soon, there's a small chance we could have everything ready for the Christmas parade and Thanksgiving, but it'd be really tight.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, like if we call them and beg.
yeah.
So realistically,
Possibly,
we
yeah, I
could
mean,
look
that
at,
would be ideal.
You can't beg tomorrow.
August 27th, I think
Can't wait
that's
for cash, 'cause all
the next
this
day
is-
we meet together to make it happen, so we can start begging on the 28th, perhaps.
Yes.
Don't
Actually,
let
phone
'em
call it with a heads
spill
up ahead of
something.
time might help. If it looks like it. Anything else?
Any other questions for Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
6, finance operations and full computer bids. Dan was not here at the last meeting that was discussed and brought up to speed. Okay.
There you go.
The discussion at that time, I remember there was 3 bids. And the state bid had emailed it earlier, later,
After,
with or without the knowledge of the other bids.
without,
Likely without.
right.
And so there was a discussion of what to do with it, and I believe, I don't think I brought it with me, there was a recommendation from Jaworski. And I guess the recommendation from Jaworski was different from the recommendation from Mr. Black.
No, it was the same. Well, his letter of concern was some of the items that we had talked about with the state bid and the competitiveness amongst the technology companies, where if they know they're going against the state, they may not choose to put in a bid because they know the state will ultimately typically come in at the best price, and that it can be opinion forming for districts and individuals that, well, like say Heartland, well, they always come in, $5,000, $6,000 more than the state, so they don't even choose to offer a bid.
Did Jaworski's recommendation say the state bid because it was a brand that he has more out here?
It's the uniformity, that has historically been what we have done thus far. We bring the same piece of equipment into the building that, far as serviceable and support outside, is similar. The reason why the state bid wasn't brought forward is because of what they didn't follow the sealed bid, like I had mentioned, and we were following the protocol. And bring that forward.
Did we ask Attorney Bill about that?
About the,
I mean,
we have the
Did we or
right to
should we?
reject any bid at any time.
Did we or should we? What's your question?
did we or should we? Both.
Okay.
I did not confer with Greg specifically on it, but the board has the right in your policy to reject any bid at any time. Is it good practice to reject bids?
No.
Probably not, but you have that right. And that's common in almost every district policy as far as accepting bids. Districts have that right to reject or accept.
You wouldn't want to get it to happen.
Probably not.
How long are these good?
The computers, it's what, 4-year rotation?
No, I mean,
Oh, the bids themselves, I don't have that done. Usually it's 30 or 60 days.
Could you bring back these same numbers?
Could we? I think we would still be able to act on these 4 bids. I'd have to confer with Tony to see if it would be done.
You want to do that?
Yes.
The purpose,
Because now you have a state.
Right,
You didn't have a state.
we did have it, you're right.
You did.
We did not have it when we
Why
opened.
can't we just, if you can get,
Let me see if I can understand. When there was 3 sealed bids, the top 3 provided sealed bids by the timeline. The state bid came on email that same day.
Correct, they did not follow.
And it
the
was
bids.
here at our meeting. But the recommendation was the state is out because it didn't follow the sealed bids. Tony Jaworski says, so what? Well, I want the state computers because they're the same as where I have. And I'm a little baffled as to, and I'll be blunt, if it's Corey Wagner and he makes a recommendation, administrator backs him 100%. If Tony Jaworski makes a recommendation, we throw out the state bid. I don't understand that.
But I think we've all matured over the
Okay.
timeframe.
because I think he was
Policy.
burned by the last time
Okay.
and he realized that. I am guessing.
And now, if we have the right to rejected any and all. Did the state bid meet the requirements of the sealed bids? Probably not to the letter. Could have they, had they had more time? Possibly, I don't know. You know, is the bidding process still evolving into something that's workable so we get the best price? Can we do it with or without legal advice? That's another question. I'm of the opinion that this board can take the low bid because it's in all of our bids that we have that right. Not the low bid, we can pick and choose whatever we want. That's my opinion.
So you're saying we can take the state bid?
That's my personal opinion, but I do not have legal advice.
If it's still up.
If it's still available, yes.
Why don't you look, is everybody okay with this? See if they're all gonna be good. Let's use the ones that we have.
If these numbers are still fresh, if they're still,
Yeah, if they're
still doable, and Gil says it's okay to take the state even though they didn't follow the precise sealed
Then I would
letter of
take
our
the state.
RFP.
Otherwise, you're gonna be a whole nother 30 days.
You're absolutely right. The timing of the start of the school year and so on and so forth. But I just want to make that I'm aware and the board's aware then that you're not you're following the policy that's been established by recognizing this right now. For that to be following the policy, the board would have to recognize a 2/3 vote of waiving that process to accept the state bid if it is available.
Well, then put it on the agenda.
It's up to each of us as a group, each individual as a group, whether or not.
Well, from what I read, Tony wasn't too happy with the rest of it, but the state is what he wants.
Well, I agree. The state's what we should do, but
Is it
it didn't
cheaper?
come in under the policy that
I know.
that's created.
I don't find
So
out.
And
what
we
do we
gave-
do? We gotta
and
either
we
follow
gave
the
Scott-
policy or we don't.
And we hollered, well, we didn't holler, we discussed with Scott the fact that they didn't follow it last time.
Right.
Or 2 times ago, right,
Oh.
2 times ago.
And I guess that raises
So
the
now we're
question.
telling them, well, now maybe this time we don't have to follow.
That raises the question of technology and how it's put out there. If it's a technology bid and the state has a process in place, as we looked at here, they've traditionally been that low-level bid. If you give that 2/3 majority vote to say, yeah, we're gonna avoid it and work off the state bid, so be it then.
Then I think next time you should come to us and try to get it waived before you can put it out.
How did,
Most of the time, it doesn't happen.
how did the state bid come in? Did it come in on a PDF file?
Just a regular email.
So it wasn't a PDF that you had to open to find it?
I don't know what type of document specifically. Assuming it was
Sealed up.
probably.
PDF was sealed?
They're on the open computers already?
Yep, they're gone. They're sold.
That's what I figured.
You
So
got
how
it.
you sitting there?
And as far as the
School's gonna start
timing,
if there's no computers.
the timing of, it'll take a few weeks to get them in and then install and have them ready to go. And I know Mr. Wilbur and I had chatted about some of our NWA testing and our computer arts graphics course that is first semester, and we have a plan to accommodate those kids in other labs for the time being.
Not for graphic cards, for NWA we do. Graphic cards would really help if we could get them in there, but we do have an alternate plan without the computer.
Well, there's no way these are gonna get it on time if we don't vote for 2 weeks. So it's not an action item, right?
We traditionally don't have an action item on a committee night, so it's just how the chips roll.
Would you like me or Mr. Black to contact Gil that we've not crossed any lines here? Would you prefer to do it?
Well, policy is law.
But
I agree.
We're not gonna get thrown in jail if we
No.
don't follow policy.
No, you're not. You can reject any bid you want.
You could,
And we did vote on it last time when we voted it down for one of the other members other than the state. What that means.
So if I had a recommendation I could bring forward, I would recommend that the board at the July meet, or the August meeting, takes a vote to waive the bidding process for the 30 computers and recognize the state bid, and then later in the agenda, with, if this is the accurate bid, that the board makes a recommendation to now approve the state bid for the purchase of 30 computers.
Anybody uncomfortable with that?
No, but we have to start being more consistent. We're not
Oh, but
giving them mixed
after,
signals all the
when I
time.
wasn't here, but I read
No, I didn't.
Tony's, what he wanted, and what the other ones isn't what he wanted, so I would have tried to work on it too. Why pay for something that he doesn't want?
Because we were following the policy.
Now I don't know.
Well, I guess
Well-
that's,
Like I
We
said, then you're not gonna get
And the three-bid policy,
Yeah,
I
we-
think, is going to evolve into a more work-oriented, maybe more time for the state, more knowledge that they're not available on that particular week when, how much time was the RFP out there with deadlines? And the state does the state bid on sealed bids normally? Do they never do it? Do they always do it? You know, why were they late? How, no. I think
Time will
that's-
tell, I guess, as to how they handle going forward.
Well, and that's why too, I did ask Scott at our last meeting to have this bidding policy brought, him to talk about this, because when we buy textbooks, you know, there's only a few vendors. When we come to the technology part of it, yeah, it's over the $10,000, but the state always comes in lower, so.
But
why
can the
not?
state provide a sealed bid?
Yes, they
But
can.
why
But what
would
is
it
it,
be?
but if this is the way it's gonna be all the time when we want to order,
It's
like
not
it
gonna
is
be
with
like this.
textbooks.
It's not gonna be like this.
Well, for now, it's
State
going
has
to
always
be.
been,
Well, just one time.
no, state is almost always.
Yeah, but I mean, he's talking about the sealed bid.
No, but
But
what
why
I'm
offer the
saying is,
seal-
next
why
time
not
we
waive
buy
the sealed
computers,
bid?
Tony should come in, and should waive the 2/3, and then we
Wow.
should go with the state.
Not only.
Well, you
You're not
gotta,
gonna spend $90,000.
well, we just can't keep giving them mixed signals, so.
But this doesn't happen. This is the first time I can remember this has ever happened. Correct?
Well, it's the first time he followed the policy to the letter that we told him to follow.
Isn't it?
I don't know if there's been other times where the state bid's not been, the lowest, typically it has been.
But typically, 9 out of 10.
I think the three bids could possibly stand, and the method that gets done through an RFP could be refined to prevent this from happening.
Well, I
That's my
think
opinion.
we just have to,
The RFP process for this is very detailed,
Yeah. But maybe the timing, or I don't know why the state didn't follow.
That was on the page.
because the guy was on vacation. That's the answer we got.
So,
they're cutting
Do what
back on
you're
state
gonna do.
employees, what
Okay.
are you guys okay with that? Yes. Let's move on.
so we're gonna have 4 bulls on
Fine,
these two things.
follow the policy.
If that bid is still open.
If it's still open,
And who's contacting Mr. I think
We don't
we're
really
able
need
to.
to.
You don't want, you're not contacting
Well, you
Mr.
can.
I'll give them a call if you'd like.
I don't care, but let's be,
Just give him a heads up,
Let's
and what
make
we're
sure we-
anticipating, because I don't think he's gonna be here unless there's some other hot topics that.
I just don't want you to come back next time and say, oh geez, Scott, you're supposed to contact Mr.
I can email and give him the
Neil
scenario.
said he's going to.
That would be a first.
All right, we'll coordinate, if
Okay.
you have some questions, and a way to ask the question, we'll coordinate before I call. Email or,
Sure.
we're up to 6B, 1213 co-curricular compensation grid.
Okay, in your materials, there is a copy of the 1213 extracurricular compensation grid, and there's another sheet that has 2 paragraphs talking about the FFA advisors, and then again, the athletic director and game manager. Just a little brief history on the grid. Annually, members of the co-curricular compensation grid meet if there are any proposed changes to the grid itself. And the administrative team had one to bring forward for discussion, and another one was put forward for discussion to the compensation committee. We met July 9th or so, right around that first week of July, to talk about this grid. I'm just going to talk briefly about the FFA advisors and what my potential recommendation will be to the board. Currently, we have 2 FFA advisors in the district, and both of which do an outstanding job. All kinds of kids. You know, there's a huge percentage of students that are part of the organization. They're involved in school activities, national activities, local, community, statewide. They represent our district very well. So the positions themselves are very much worth our investment as a district. Historically, we have compensated our FFA advisors on an hourly basis, on a project base, I guess. If they're involved in an activity, they work 5 hours, they log down 5 hours, document it, and turn it in the central office, and we compensate them out quarterly for their time as the advisors.
So they get paid for every hour they've turned.
They do. They would get paid for every hour involved.
At their normal rate?
It's at that co-curricular rate of
Okay.
$13, $14 an hour. for that.
I thought they always had just extended.
No, the extended is the summer, that's different.
Well, this is different.
This is during the school year. This is just during the school year. Okay. So the FFA advisors are the only ones that aren't on this grid. And as far as streamlining the process, and I think making it more transparent for all the other coaches and advisors, I think it warrants that it should be on the grid. Looking at the supporting material which they put forth on the month and the activities in which they're involved in, it's a ton of time. And 2010-11, the district paid out approximately $7,618 for those two positions. Okay, note that that does fluctuate slightly from year to year potentially if activities change or the involvement is not there. My meeting with Sandy and Connie at the end of the school year, I proposed this idea that, hey, let's get you guys on the grid. And I think it's in best interest for you, your group, and the other groups and activities out there. So at our meeting, I brought forth a recommendation to implement the two advisors, and they would be underneath Lane 1, and have those two positions recognized on that co-curricular grid. That way, as far as budgeting, we know each year exactly what we're going to have to budget for FFA advisors, just as every other co-curricular position. It is always an open-ended question as to what it may be. It becomes much more exact for us as we do that. As far as money to the grid, we've got an allotment of money set aside for the advisors. We would take the money within our budget and apply it to the grid as new money for those two positions. So that is a budgeted item in our 12-13 budget. It would just be removing it from one line item, placing it into another.
I just noticed the elementary teachers that put on plays aren't on here.
On playground?
No,
What
they put on plays.
I'm sorry.
They put on plays, drama.
That it's not on there, correct?
I don't see it.
Yeah, correct. That's right now. That's not a recognized co-curricular activity. The process to bring something like that onto the grid, it needs to come from, let's say, one of the advisors of the drama group to say, hey, I'd like to have this position considered to be on the grid, and they come in and talk about what they do, so on and so forth, and potentially it gets placed onto the grid. If it's a line item where there isn't money already established in the budget for them, traditionally what has happened that, let's say, they're going to recognize the person for, let's say, lane 5 for $1,200. They would create the position and they would take the $1,200 from the remainder of the grid to create that new position, so that the district's not continually putting new money into that grid. But they do have the option to bring it forward. You're saying it should
I
be
would
there.
strongly encourage that they be encouraged to bring it forward.
How can they be?
I strongly encourage if someone
Okay.
encourages them.
They could bring it forward. Typically, we meet end of the school year, beginning of the summer, and they can bring it forward with recommendations for that. Yeah. It's at the upper levels. That is part of the recognition.
How long have we had two FFA advisors?
I believe it was 1999. I started in 98, and Connie started in 98 as well. And I believe that second year they split the duties, where they each took half the role. At one time, one person was approximate, that $7,000, that's what they would make from their advisorship over, a year. And then they decided to split it 50-50 down the middle, where as close as it could be to that position.
You ever check into these hours?
Yeah,
I called a few parents on these hours.
If there, well, this is,
Yes,
right, exactly. This is what they put forward. This isn't,
this isn't an every year thing, though.
not some of these items, exactly. Some of these items are not an every year event, right?
I mean, they don't put in 838 hours.
This is if they were to do the different things that they historically have done.
I talked to a few parents. I have good questions, some are part of class.
Sure. Well, this is what they brought forward in the process, Dan.
I totally agree. I don't see where the coaches, they can't put in every hour they.
And for whatever reason, the prior boards and administration felt that compensating them by an hourly basis was in better interest to the district. That's what worked, I guess, for them. As far as the accountability, absolutely. Creating a sheet of I worked this many hours at this thing there. I have all the confidence that our staff are doing the right things, but it can't. I guess the ability to be as transparent as we can be. There could be some cloudiness there for an individual through that process.
So supposedly, these were the hours they worked this year outside of their hours?
This was,
This
is an example of what they
example.
typically do during the, last year, or during 2010,
Yeah, what was
11,
their
the numbers I have, one advisor made 31.75, and the other advisor made 44.43 for 2010, 11.
Include your mileage or whatever.
Yes, that's,
So if they get this,
right, that would be, that's their stipend, just as if an advisor or a coach or forensic coach, whatever, they invest into the program, meeting the needs of the program, they'd be paid out similar to a coach during the time of the year.
But you don't count these summer hours because they are already.
Summer hours are part of their extended contract.
So they don't put in for these hours
Well,
above?
that's built into their salary.
So they're gonna get the 240-day extended contract, correct?
Yeah, 180, it's the 20, yeah, 240 days, right.
So they're gonna get that plus another,
That's what they get now. They get their extended contract plus whatever they submit in for advisor
because a lot of this stuff is.
year-round, yeah, it goes
Contract.
year-round type activities, right?
Right.
And I guess the alternative is to maintain what it is. If the board doesn't support the concept, do that.
So I noticed football concessions, so do any other teachers ever work football concessions? Or some other club or something?
Club school.
And so they're getting paid on here, the club people?
No, the club people, school, so mostly parents.
They're,
There's some teachers and coaches that
Yeah, they do.
are chiming in every once in a while.
Teachers without pay.
Yeah.
but they're being compensated for that time of supervising the children during the concession selling.
They are,
Yes.
but if some other teacher would work.
Decides to
they
help
don't
out?
get paid.
Just for the willingness to help out, no, they wouldn't get compensated for it.
but for other groups, if another teacher would help, like another, like course or whatever, they'd be compensated for concessions.
Not that.
That would be part of their,
Right, it's part of that main advisor's extracurricular stipend, that's where that comes from.
But I never knew they got, I always thought they had extended contracts and that's what this.
Well, I'm sure there are some items, when you look into the summer months here,
I mean, breakfast on the farm, that should be on.
that's a summer,
That's,
that is a
that
summer.
should be in the summer.
right, well, the
But
June,
they
July, and
got
August,
15 hours.
June, July, and August, that's a lot of the summer school, or excuse me, the summer extended.
But they don't put in
Work.
for these.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
They put in for these hours plus their extended contract.
Well, we have to document down their summer work for Mr. Dowich in summer school, because their work that they work with our students during the summer also counts as summer school for our students. So we document down the hours in which they put in during the summer.
Okay, but just a minute now. I'm trying.
Yep.
They get a summer, I don't know, say they get $1,000 for summer pay. Do they also get this stuff?
Well, they wouldn't get their,
They wouldn't do it, but
they get
get
$25 an hour for X amount of hours for their summer extended contract. And that number is, I'd have to go back to see how many days they're recognized and hours they're recognized, but that's built into their annual salary. So they're not getting an extra stipend or check during the summer. That's already built into their
All right.
to their annual salary. What they receive during the school year, okay, from September through June, are the things that happen during the school year. Let's say if I got, what's one here, middle school officer training, that was 6 hours. One of them would put in 6 hours of working with the kids, and they'd get compensated at an hourly rate for that event. And that's where it becomes kind of a process. 1 month will have X amount of hours, you know, for whatever the activity is. The next month it may not be as much. It's just a reimbursement of the time that they put in.
I'm gonna be really stupid because I am asking another stupid question. They work 140 hours on breakfast stop and farm, but they're not getting paid for it. That's part of their summer pay.
No, they're getting paid. Anything on here, they're getting paid extra, right? Besides the 240.
See, I'm trying to figure out June, July, and August.
Yeah, that's what I don't understand why they would.
Are they
That's-
getting 20?
That's the students that are that they're overseeing is the left column, the right column is the hours.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah, students
20,
involved in the
36
left column.
hours.
Total advisor hours is on the right.
36 hours. So I guess, are they getting paid for 36 hours times 13, or is that part of their summer pay?
I guess I'd have to see how it's broken down. If it's turned in under that end of the year reimbursement, that's typically the third week of June or so, or the second week of June, when they have that event. I don't have the answer to that right
And
now.
I'm sorry, I should have called you, but I didn't.
That's fine.
Do you have the history in comparison to 10 and 11's district paid out 7,600, the two FFA advisors?
Not
You know
with-
the history of the year back and the year back
Not
and the
with
year back.
me,
and the
but
year back.
the
Has it
10,
been going up, then going down? Is there no
It's
trend?
about, I would assume, and I would say it's relatively the same, but I don't have those numbers. You know, I just brought the 10, 11. Our official audit isn't complete with the 11, 12. Like I said, it'd be the next reflection, the most accurate reflection.
Scott, who's on this committee? Some coaches too?
Doug was on that, Mike Hansen, Julie Hendricks, myself, Matt Wilbert,
And so it was the agreement of the committee, they felt that was a fair thing for them
placement
to
for,
do?
correct.
And the amount was fair?
But they're getting paid.
We're getting higher.
The thing is, Bugsy, they have an extended contract, they get paid, but then they still get paid extra April, May, June, July. The whole year they're getting extra.
And I'm gonna guess at this because I don't know, but whatever they turn in for time isn't questioned. Wherever said no, they just get it. And as it continues to escalate, it gets harder and harder to say no. By putting them in here, there is no yes or no for administration. It becomes a set figure. Then the question becomes, what is the set figure? Should it be lane one? Should it be lane something else?
Right.
I think that could be a discussion point. I personally think that it's difficult for you to say no to people when they turn in time for these things, and it's escalating. I don't know that. That's my prediction.
Well, in the sense of an advisorship of working with the kids, I guess unless somebody were to bring an item of concern of, let's say whatever this activity was that, hey, well, we didn't do that, and we have a requisition or invoice to pay out on it, that would raise question. That hasn't come to my desk, I guess, as far as what you're referencing.
But, you know, these are some of the highest paid people on our staff, extended contracts, and then I'll use word we've heard here before, they nickel and dime the district per hour without anybody ever saying no.
Well, we don't know. I mean, if people have heard that they're getting paid for stuff, then they should bring it to Scott. And it's up to Scott to investigate. Should be evaluating teachers at this.
No one knows that for sure.
That's right.
I just give you my opinion.
But we should not be evaluating staff members.
Just assuming it's not correct.
So they
And,
were,
and status quo would remain where we currently are at. I guess that's if no action is taken, we would follow the same practice that.
Well, you could take that, I mean.
Who makes the call whether it should be in lane one or one of the other lanes?
The decision for lane one was the total amount from 1011, dividing it by two positions. It's, that total itself, the 7,618, is more than, two positions at 3,500.
And is within the board's right to change that lane or not?
Absolutely. If you feel there's more of an appropriate place amongst the lanes that justifies it, that can come from the board as well.
I don't think we have enough information to make that call.
It's what they're making now. It's less than that.
Yeah, but they're getting paid already. They have extended contracts, so I.
Not from September to June. This would take that place, and we know what they're gonna be getting. It's less than that.
It's 248. Most of them have 190 contracts. So that's 50 days. So they're getting paid June and July. So they have 1 month. But they really don't. But they're charging us 300. We're making, I think it's close to $4,000 in extended contract, right?
$45 an hour for
That's what it usually.
X amount of hours.
So then you're gonna add that on, you're gonna put another $3,500 onto that. I agree they should get paid, but I don't think it should be the first one.
I don't feel I have enough information, and I wasn't on the committee, and I think the committee came forward with it.
Because if you're extended contract, you're working, 20, 30 hours a week, well, then you're adding another, you take these 838 hours, multiply by 2.
How many other districts have multiple FFA advisors?
I'm not aware of any, maybe some of the larger districts, typically it's one. Wapaka may have 2, I think. They have 2, right.
Because I never really knew they got this. This is the first time I ever seen it.
Yeah.
Because I always knew they had the extended contract.
Yeah, the extended
I didn't know
contract,
they
yeah.
got paid above that.
Yes,
Yeah.
compensation amongst the school year has traditionally been part of reimbursement to
Are
them.
there any other teaching positions that get those things?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, all the other advisorship, co-curricular positions are
Around here.
recognized. I don't know whether that's why we're talking about it.
Yeah.
Still. What's that? That's on there. Yeah.
Well, that doesn't make sense then at all. 'Cause those are
Okay,
considered
I have another
programs.
question. Okay, we do this for this one. What's the next one going to say? Well, God, I want to go first. Like,
Well, that,
how are you
Where-
going to stop
where's-
that? Where are you going to stop it?
Well,
Where's-
at the committee level that we meet at, that consists of a board member, Scott, myself, and Julie and Mike, and we probably take that into consideration. I guess I have a problem simply because this was the committee's recommendation, which Doug sat in on. And saying, you say you don't have enough knowledge, but we did.
No, and I'm admitting that.
Yeah,
That's why I said
I'm just saying,
I
this
have
was
to
our
accept what the
recommendation
committee said.
with our homework. I would hope that it would hold water a little bit going forward.
No, I said I couldn't make a decision, so you have to go with what the committee recommended as far as I'm.
And that's kind of my point. That's, why have the committee meet? You know, I guess I'm looking for a little bit of trust in the committee.
Kind of like having a consultant you don't trust.
That never happens here.
I guess the point of interest that their extended contract goes through the end of this month. And when school starts, then we're back on to the September 1, keeping track of items. If it's not the intent to change the existing format, we can continue as is,
Well,
or we can make a recommendation.
but I don't. Lane 2 is greater because of the extended contract. You're jumping up to lane 1. So the next person, let's say he's instrumental music. Put me at number 1. Why can't I have number 1? He's got an extended contract, but I bet you he doesn't put in extra hours.
No, he doesn't get compensated during the school year. Beyond.
No, I mean, that's why I really, That's my question. Where are you gonna stop?
But the band teacher,
Do you have an extended contract that you work with?
is he on here? The
Yes,
band
the
He's in lane, lane two.
thing to the instrumental music, so that's for the parades, the concerts, the pep band, so on and so forth. That's where he's compensated during the school year for that.
I guess, I trust Doug was on the committee. As I said, this is why we never have committees, because we never trust people to represent it on.
If you bump them to lane 2 or 3, I mean, by placing in lane 1, they're already taking a cut from what they're getting paid as it is. So if we don't, okay, let's say we don't put them in the grid. What are you gonna do? Tell them that we're not gonna pay for all the extra hours that they're putting in for now? Or,
Who's, I call parents that
But-
kids in FFA, and I'm not actually,
No,
but I mean,
you're talking.
a lot of these things are part of class contract. They're getting an extended contract. So how can you have 800 hours extra in a year, over a year, 240 days? That
So-
just,
So maybe that's the question.
that's my question.
Yeah, and that's a very valid question. So the appropriateness of where this goes,
I agree, but I don't think it should be in lane 1. Because then you're gonna end up with, why can't I do that? I think if you compare it to the band, like you said, the band guy, he doesn't put in extra hour, I mean, he puts in extra hours, but he doesn't bill us for anything over.
He gets his 2,900.
He gets his 2,900.
right.
Let me ask you a question. If we go with number 1 lane, are we going to be assured they're going to do all these activities?
There's, to say that all those activities happen every year,
These don't happen.
they happen, like the reenactment of the crash scene, what they do
No,
every
I
3 years.
understand.
There's,
But my point is, and I'm not evaluating them, I like them,
Sure.
I have great respect for them, but say
if they stop doing stuff.
yeah, and
Are
say,
they
well,
doing it for
gee,
the
I
money
gotta
or-
cut in, well.
Right.
Are they
I'm
doing it
just
for the
saying,
money or doing it for the kids?
Yeah.
I'm just saying, they might say, well, we gotta cut in pay, are they going to say, well, sure, we're not gonna do.
Right. And I guess on the sense of integrity for the 2 individuals that do it,
And I'm not knocking.
I'm certain that wouldn't influence.
Because you're going to know, I mean, if the head basketball coach doesn't show up for his game, you're probably gonna know it. Or if he doesn't show up for his practice, somebody's gonna,
I think in answer to your question, that one of the reasons we would know if that wasn't happening is the proficiency of their program would drop. And right now, it's running at a very high level. I mean,
I
it's,
totally respect for him.
in some points, it's the face of our school, and exemplary job by them, and we would see that drop off. I think that's another reason why lane 1 is deserving of the work they've been doing, because of the exemplary job they're doing. I mean, we're pulling down, if you ever came to the FFA banquet, scholarships for kids, students, proficiencies, I think we had 32 last year. Officers, nationwide we've had, it goes on and on. So that would be one reason why lane 1 would be a good fit.
I have no problem with it, but I really wish somebody would go to those elementary teachers and tell them they should come forward. Thank you.
They're not interested.
Well, then I think in that case, administrators should be allowed to come forward and say, hey, I have these teachers that are putting in this time. I don't wanna ruin your procedure there, but,
Problem is, and I know this is a tangent, but when you're talking about, it's not just one advisor, you're talking
Oh, I know.
4 advisors in Fremont and 3 here.
I know.
So,
well, they're talking 800 hours here.
I know.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you're a volunteer, you can take a night off, somebody else can fill in. You
No,
don't
that's
have that
They like the
obligation.
flexibility.
That's a point. Okay.
How would you like to proceed? I guess we're at that point of going forward.
You wanna ask each other? I'll just say myself, we had a board member on the committee. I think we should.
I'll start on this side. Doug, your thoughts?
I guess I'm not understanding, Dan, where you bring up the music, the instrumental one. If they're,
I'm saying he's not putting in a building. And he's got an
But if he
extended-
wasn't on the grid, he would be.
He would be.
That's what I'm saying. You get a set amount.
Yes,
here,
but he
you don't-
has an extended contract.
So bottom line is it
Plus
costing
he-
us anymore?
Plus he is,
This past year,
On-
it'll cost us less compared to,
yes, but a lot of these things should be done on their extended contract. You should not have $800 plus an extended contract.
Are you gonna rate up all hours that they should be doing and what they should?
Well, you know,
You know what I'm saying? How do you know what?
I think that other years, hours or money would be helpful in this decision. Whether it's, has there been a substantial increase, and that's the reason why this is here, but it's hard to say no.
Why would you
You know-
say no if that was the understanding that they were to list their hours?
I never knew that.
Well-
I always knew they had an extended contract, but I didn't know. They were
Golly
putting
gee,
in,
somebody should have told you.
I never thought, because I knew they had an extended contract.
But my point is, why would administrators say, all these years they've been doing it, and say, oh, no, I decided today we're not gonna pay you for that? I mean, that's the way it's been done. It's been done that way. I don't think any, and I agree, if you have to write to the principal, if he sees his program go down, and he's gonna do something about it.
Randy's thoughts.
So I can see part of the answer. Seems like a lot of double pay, but the price, the cost is going down compared to how it was.
Or was it up last year compared to other years when they were said, okay, the budget is this much, and you can't keep turning in these hours for all this stuff. Either don't do it, or don't keep charging for it. I don't know the history.
I guess to my knowledge, that's never happened, with that line item.
So we got it.
I talked to, Connie was doing an advisorship for, I think, a basketball game for concession stands. And I know that according to her, she was turned down some of those hours that she did put in. So I don't think they're getting paid for everything they turn in, at least from.
It would seem unlikely, because if you work 240 days, your 8-hour days, and do the math, it'd be hard to find another 400 and some hours in a year. Just, you can't, there's not that many hours in a day.
Pardon me, I'm sorry, I was paying attention. Randy, I did not hear your answer. Could, I see part of Dane's issue.
Okay.
Where they're almost like, it's double. But according to past year, cost, what it's gonna cost the school district is going down.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I was trying to listen.
So we're in 12 hours a day.
Oh, many teachers
Every
work 12
five-
hours a day,
five
Dan.
days a week?
Many teachers work 12 hours a day. Ask my kids why they never became teachers. Sorry. I just had to throw that in because I don't think there was a night I didn't work 4 more hours. But that has nothing to do with this.
Neil, did you have any more gauging from other members, or?
Jim get a say? Dan get a say?
Not in front. No. Not in front. Because like Neil said, where you work in 11 months, with your extended contract, where are you gonna get another 400 hours? Do the math.
That's not 800 hours a year, those are just those are the ultimate activities, those aren't the activities that go on each year, some don't take place.
And some of the activities are outside on the weekends, the state conventions, or the fire and ice, or the different events that happen. It's not all within the traditional schooling, I guess.
And we have staff. That sounds like the day school staff. They're there for the kids. They don't necessarily need dollars like that. They're in to do every time I talk about money, you need to interrupt.
Well, because I don't like the way you talk sometimes. You know, like you don't like the way I talk.
Sure.
So worrisome.
I would not do blame. It'd be different if these were starting paid people. That we're really giving a lot of extra. But these are veterans that have been here a long time. They've always been doing a lot of extra. Not always, and when it comes for money, are they doing it for the money or doing it for the kids?
Well, I'm quite certain they're doing it for the children, for their program. That's, that's why they choose to be an advisor. It's, you don't have to be an advisor. That's a choice that they make.
And some, we have people on staff that are advisors that don't turn it down. That's what I think can improve morale in staff for the kids.
But
So,
there
so
were
if we
staff.
vote not to put it, so when we meet in 2 weeks, and we vote not to put it on the grid, are you recommending that we don't accept the hours that they turn in and pay them then too, or make more cuts? than What we've already done? Or,
I don't think they should be the number one grid, because then all of a sudden you're gonna have everybody else coming as the instrumental music.
then they're gonna come to the committee, and then we're gonna talk about it, we're gonna decide whether we're gonna recommend it to the rest of the board, as a committee.
Typically, if somebody comes forth looking for a lane adjustment, they're gonna bring rationale as to why they feel it should move to another lane. They picked up different activities, different programs that they're doing.
But correct me if I'm wrong, the pot's only so big. If we want lane enhancement and we would vote to move it forward, there have to be readjustment amongst the others, correct?
Correct.
So it's not like give a mouse a cookie, and you gotta give them a glass of milk. The pot's only so big, so if others come in, there'd have to be other changes.
But in this case, we're increasing the pot by using the money that,
The budgeted monies that have been put forth
Exactly.
on an annual basis.
Which is less than,
what they were doing.
What you're gonna get in.
Is it budgeted money, or is it money that whatever the request is met?
It's all within our annually approved budget overall. Say it's a line item, it's a line item amount total paid, this type of an activity.
May I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Okay, I imagine they, like you say you're gonna take a class, so they submit a thing and put in ahead of time so much money for this.
they budget for that, yeah.
Right,
Is the question is are these items pre-requested or
Pre-requested.
post-charged?
pre-requested, like,
And
like when you're gonna take
what
a
is the answer to
class,
that?
right?
The answer to that is, during my tenure as high school principal, that process has never happened. They, they engage in the different activities as an advisor.
not-
Don't they
it's
make
not
a budget?
pre-approved.
It's gotta be, I mean, but you know how you say you're going to take a class?
Yep.
And so you put money aside for 9 credits?
Right.
I mean, don't they put money in their budget for,
From a district standpoint, we look at the past year, how much we spent, and
so you put it,
it
but
budget
it's put
accordingly to that overall.
It's not in their department.
No, not specifically for this
I
advisorship
misunderstood.
position.
All right.
This has been something that's been in my head since I started as high school principal, with this potential discrepancies that how it's been treated and with respect to other advisors. And you can see where our discussions have gone, with that, so. Proper placement at another,
I mean, look at this total, that's 1,329 hours for the whole year. So that's what, almost 650 hours plus.
Then you gotta look at some of the 2 days, like the state application that mentioned it's 4 days.
Yeah, but yes, but they're getting paid already because they went through the extended contract. So you should
That
be working
105
8 hours,
is already paid for
4
some.
days, so you could take 32, 64 hours off. Why are they getting paid when they're getting paid already?
Are those school days?
That's the extended contract.
No, it's paid days, for which they say they work 105 hours. majority.
Good job, so I don't know.
Dan, I'm laying odds that probably the hours that Connie put in at the fair, shoveling up the stables, at night probably weren't on there. So just, there are some hours that
Oh,
probably
she's
aren't
good.
on there.
I think she's on the fair board, isn't she?
No. My point being, Dan, there are probably some hours on there. And that's probably minimum.
All right, if I understand this correctly, there's some choices. One is do nothing, and it stays like it is.
Correct.
Another choice would be to put them in the book liquor compensation grid. And that could be a yes or no question. Then, which lane? Or do you put them in the compensation grid only if you go in this lane? Is there some compromise from the board that allows this to happen? Or is it an impasse that does nothing? Or is there a majority that says it's going to the grid, it's going to lane one, and that's the way it's going to be? And at committee level, we should be able to discuss this freely.
Well, as you know, Doug was on the committee already, and he agreed with it.
Okay.
I would think that would be one thing we'd look at.
Okay?
Would the board like to talk to the advisors? Have them in and talk about their positions or what they do? I mean, would that give additional insight that might be needed? Making a decision.
That's almost like a board meeting. Well, we either respect the compensation committee, or here's another thing we're taking over.
I never do.
Well, you are in Dr. Elton, there, too, go.
Right. And in that committee, Doug, was there a discussion that much of this is already paid on summer extended time?
Yeah. Was that brought up?
There was discussion about it, but then there was also the fact of the last year that they were paid too, seeing that this was less.
Yes,
Like
but
Scott said, we don't know exactly.
This isn't every year.
Well, that's fine. Let's put it on the agenda for the next meeting and we'll vote and we'll decide on what should happen.
And do we want to vote to go to the grid? Do you want to vote to the grid at a particular lane? What would you, how do you want
Whoever
to?
makes a motion, make a motion to
Okay.
accept the
Make a motion
committee
on their
report.
own.
Right. And then I guess I would recommend that Mr. Blunt does not give us a canned motion on that.
Well, we never have to take his motion.
Okay, but I think if,
Just a suggestion.
you want this on the agenda in 2 weeks, put it on the grid?
Sure.
On there for an action item. Decide one way or the other for an action.
Anything else on?
Yep, the other item is the athletic director, game manager, to be considered on the co-curricular group. Jeff Fazier is our athletic director. He started off his second year in that position. Just a little past history prior to Mr. Wilbert being our athletic director for 6 years.
Yep.
We had staff members that took on that role, ones that resemble the same positions what Jeff has, where he teach a number of hours and then given hours during the day to work on athletic type preparation and then supervision. During that time in tenure, the district recognized the stipend for that individual, ranging anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000 a year, primarily for the time spent at schools during the supervision of events. When Mr. Wilbert took on the responsibility and role, that was part of his compensation and salary, and a designated supervision stipend was not part of that. I think we're back to what we were in the past, and this came forward as well at the committee to look at the idea of implementing the athletic game supervisor to the grid in lane 3 for that position. And Mr. Fazier submitted some information as well as his time and commitment during the after-school events.
And he was satisfied with lane 3? I see him at every game, that's,
Right.
yeah.
He may have won lane 4, yeah. But but that's the recommendation that came forward at lane 3. And this would be a new position, which ultimately would be an additional $2,400 being placed on the grid. This is new money to the grid if the board were to recommend this position.
Where did that come from?
That would, we would have to find it within our budget to put it on this compensation grid. Can we? Yes, we could find $2,400 to implement that.
Doug, were you at this committee too, anything to add?
Other than we want to, when we discussed it too, right now there is some room in the grid.
There is.
With some of the money, because some of the positions aren't being filled.
Correct.
That was taken into consideration.
Over the past two years, 1 year for certain, middle school cheerleading, there's one other one in there.
It was either football.
Maybe a freshman football this last year. There are occasionally all these positions aren't filled, and that money then just recycles through. It doesn't go to anyone in particular. It sits idle and it does not get dispersed out. As of now, there is nobody that has taken on the middle school cheerleading role. I don't know if there's any others that we're missing at this time. So I'm not saying it's, Peter to pay Paul. I would say there's a new position in. I don't want to exclude the middle school cheerleading position from the grid. If we go a series of years and the recommendation comes forward, we don't have interest in it, it hasn't actively been acted on, we may want to consider removing it. That could be a discussion at that committee level. But I don't want to get in the habit of removing an item just so that we can add another grid item.
Okay. Is the athletic director currently a paid position?
He is compensated on his, it's not designated athletic director. He's a full-time teacher, and that's his salary.
He was given time.
He's given time during the day.
During the day,
Okay.
thing was cut in half. He's actually working.
Right. What's his schedule this year, Matt? How many hours is Jeff? 3?
The 8-hour day, you get your prep, and then 3 AD, I'm sorry, and then 5 classes, correct?
Yep, that's
Eight.
right.
And then 9.
That'd be 9.
That'd be 9.
I know,
He has 3.
because I know,
3 AD and 1 prep.
when we
Yes.
did this, I think we cut his workload in half.
We did. We did.
So then he's just getting his pay plus his 24 hours.
This 2,400 would be for the time spent after school.
Right.
I see him at, even the kids wrestling, I've seen him.
It's a
It's a
tireless
lot of
job.
hours.
It's a
No,
tireless
I
job.
have seen him at almost every activity.
And I guess, a point of interest was brought up, there's people that may be willing to do this job, volunteer time, and we'll always take volunteers to support our supervision. But expertise and knowledge of being able to know what to do when the officials aren't there, or there's an emergency or whatnot. Jeff brings that skill set as well as anyone in that role to manage that meeting. Dealing with an unruly parent that is giving the ref a hard time, and he's the guy who needs to say it. You need to leave the building and go.
Or having to throw in a referee shirt because you get certified in every event in case a referee doesn't show.
They are the jack of all trades.
I used to ref. Well, when you saw me reffing, though, it was kind of disgrace because you knew I probably forgot to call a ref or something.
Well, how does this, let's say they want to quit the athletic director, is this tied into are we tying these people into these jobs?
Well, right now, if, let's say if Mr. Frazier said, I don't want to be an athletic director. I don't want to, well, as an educator, we have 4 classes for them to teach.
So then if
He then theoretically removes himself from,
a full-time job.
exactly.
I was just wondering if that does tie in.
Sure. Well, how he's currently configured, that's his assignment, and if he were to choose not to, he could dictate it.
I like that better than the other one. I have no problem.
Well, and let's just say Jeff decides he wants employment elsewhere, for instance, and we either have a teacher that step up to the role and get their
Did I hear that you were going to go to lane 4?
No, you didn't.
I thought that's what you said.
I thought I saw a bird coming, I was yelling forward to duck.
Okay, I thought that's what somebody said.
He certainly said everything. I mean, I don't know, but I always see him there.
7, personnel negotiations. No saying to Jim, Weyauwega-Fremont probation summary update. We've all got a letter from Gil. I'm not sure if you've seen a copy of it.
No, I have forwarded on to,
Okay, so a letter from Gil on August 10th with the status of these negotiation subsequent decisions for the board to decide. And it's addressed to Scott, and I think Scott forwarded and the rest of the board. First of all, this letter is intended to provide a summary of the last negotiation session which was held between the Board of Education and the Education Association. In our last negotiation session, August 8th, the union and the board reached an agreement on the total cost of current base salary. On the 18th, the parties had previously reached agreement on the salary adjustment disbursement net. What remained to be agreed upon was a base salary increase, if any, for the new contract term. The union at the first negotiation session had requested a base salary of 3.16%. The district had offered a base salary adjustment of 0.25%. After further discussions on August 8th, the district decided to make a final offer to the union of a base salary increase of 1%. This final offer was clearly given to the union near the conclusion of our meeting. The union then caucused and came back and said they would settle for a lump sum payment which amounted to approximately a 3% cost. The district, through me, then reminded the union that negotiations had been completed because we had already presented them our final offer. We told the union the district was not going to be offering any further increases beyond what had been offered in our final offer. We remind the union committee that we appreciate their efforts and that the teachers are valued by the district. But given the current state of affairs, we felt that the offer of 1% was fair and was in fact our final offer. The union then caucused again and came back and simply announced that they did not believe the membership would accept the 1% offer. The meeting then ended when the union left the meeting room and said, as they were leaving, that they would not be returning. It was not confirmed by the union committee at the end of the meeting that they would present their final offer to the rest of the union membership for a vote. There's issues of law. 1, prior to the recent collective bargaining law changes, the union was not required to present our final offer to the membership for a vote. As you recall, under the old law, absent the parties reaching an agreement, a WERC representative would investigate and have the exclusive authority to declare impasse. Once impasse occurred, the matter would proceed to binding arbitration. However, subsequent to the change in law, it's uncertain as to whether the union now has the obligation to present our final offer to its membership. While I believe there is a good legal argument to suggest that they have this obligation, I would not necessarily recommend that the district take any action to pursue any potential claim against the union on that basis at the present time. 2, the second issue is whether or not the district has the obligation to implement its final offer, or whether it has the discretion to not implement the final offer. It is my legal opinion that unless the union accepts the district's final offer in a timely manner, that the district has the discretion to implement or not implement the final offer. Recommendation. Inasmuch as the board has the discretion to decide whether or not to implement the final offer, my first recommendation would be for the board to make a specific decision. Regardless of which decision the board makes, i.e. implement or not implement, I also recommend the board allow me to write the union leadership informing them that unless the union accepts the final offer of the district within the next 20 days, the district will not implement the final offer, which would result in no raises of the base salary for the forthcoming year. If the board decides to implement the final offer, then of course my letter would be directed in accordance with that mandate, specifically informing the union that if they don't accept the final offer within 20 days, the board will nevertheless implement it at that time. Conclusion. In conclusion, I do not recommend any legal action taken against the union at the present time if they refuse to allow their members to vote on our final offer. However, I'm also advising the district that it has the absolute discretion to decide whether or not to implement the final offer if the union does not accept the offer in a timely manner. Finally, I am recommending that the district provide the union with a written notification that it intends to exercise the right not to implement, or the alternative, if the board decides otherwise, to implement the final offer if the union fails to accept it in the next 20 days. In my interpretation of this, is that the board has the right to not implement unless the union agrees. Gail has suggested that we give the union 20 days to either agree or not agree to the 1%. The board still has the discretion as to whether it wants to implement the 1% without them agreeing. And that is a board decision. Anybody else have a comment? There's lots of people there. It would be my suggestion that Gil does in fact write a letter to the union telling them that it will be the board's decision whether to implement 1% or in fact not implement the 1% if they don't agree to it. I think not taking it to the union membership is a risk that they have the option of taking. But I think Gil wanted to at least clarify that they understood that. Thoughts?
This was an open session.
Yes, everything was an open session.
So you raised the base, correct?
Right,
Everybody
correct.
gets the same amount.
You raised.
The overall base
Went up.
went up 300 and some odd thousand from the original base calculation, yes. That was on the opinion of Peter Davis from the WERC on how to calculate base wage.
There was approximately 4 people that didn't go as low as we originally talked about base pay. They were a little higher. Is that a fair
Yep.
abbreviated version? But there was 4 that didn't get quite as low. Because of that, a 1% had a number higher than what we used to think 1% was. And that was discussed and kind of agreed upon. I think.
And wasn't a master's put in there
I-
the
I'm-
people with the master's?
And then they recognized the base pay at the master's level for the 3 individuals that need that certification to be hired, our speech path and reading specialists.
Yeah. But total number of people that didn't go as low as what we thought base pay was originally was what, 4 or 5 people? I forget. the number.
Yeah, the starred one.
Yeah. I don't have the number in my head.
Right,
Not
right.
that bad.
And because
It was 6, okay.
because we compensated them at that rate below our
Yes,
calculated
last year's
base
pay.
rate. Last year, one would say that, well, because we paid them at that rate, that could be interpreted as your base rate, so that's why we recalculated.
So would you like to have Gil present such letter? Would you like to just make a decision in 2 weeks?
So the letter would say we may or may not?
I don't know the timing in all this. In my interpretation of this would be that the board, he's asking the board to make a decision of volunteering the 1% without an agreement, or saying we're not going to give the 1% unless they agree. I think he wanted that decision made before he presented the letter to the union and said this is the board's decision. The timing with that is a problem, because I would say if that waits 2 weeks for that decision, and then 20 days for an answer from Gil's letter and some mail time, you're talking 2 weeks and another 3 weeks. That's 5 weeks in fast number. I don't know if that's,
So instead of him writing a letter saying we will or not, he's just saying we have the option to agree or not.
he wanted the board to have a clear understanding that it's within our discretion to either implement the 1% or implement a freeze, I'll call it for lack of a better term, because of no agreement from the other side. Am I saying this correctly?
I don't mind the letter as long as we have committed ourselves to the way we're going to do it.
Okay. I guess I'm not sure how what Gil's letter would be if he doesn't know what the board wants the letter to be.
I think he's gonna need direction as
Right,
to,
so that's the underlying,
You know, why do you think that 5 weeks or whatever?
well, I guess I don't know if it is. Is the 5 weeks a problem?
I don't know where the 20 days
I think
came from.
potentially if there was a direction from the board, I could communicate it to him tomorrow. I mean, if it's appropriate.
But if we waited until the August meeting and decided.
Next time we talk about this in the August meeting.
Right,
we'll
if
get
it's on
that.
the agenda to say, hey, we've agreed we're gonna not do the 1%. We've agreed we're going to do the 1%.
Right.
That gives Gil marching orders to present the letter.
20 days from then, is that a problem?
Right, at 20, and then, 20 days, there'll be a little meal time, that's why I threw,
But it's not.
3 weeks there, 2 weeks here.
I don't see it as a
Only for the
problem.
bookkeeper.
The bookkeeping, finance piece of it, the teachers, our staff come back at August 5th payroll. If this is not settled out, we'll recognize compensation rates that we were at last year. If by chance, some adjustment is made on the plus side of where we are now, we would have to make those adjustments accordingly.
And does it require retro pay or does it not? I don't know the answer to
Seeing that it's so, and I'd have to talk to Brian and get his opinion on it, seeing that we're talking about potentially a month, it could just be spread out over the next 11 months.
And that again, I think the board could agree whatever way they want to, either no retro pay or yes retro pay, I think. What do
I
you
see
guys
your
think?
point.
Huh?
I see your point, because it's a certain amount, you just spread it over 11 months
Right.
instead of 12 months.
Right, if everyone's to get a X amount percent increase, it could just be spread out over the
Your
next.
first checks are a little low compared to the next 11 months of check.
Right, whatever that total is.
So, those are details on the.
You guys have any?
That makes it a lot easier.
Jason? What, are they gonna vote on it, or what, I guess what is?
My understanding is, if we present this, that means we have to be in agreement, or we have to agree to, or if we present this, we would have to say, yes, we approve of what happened, we support it. We agree that this is the best. And if we can't do that, I don't want to bring it to the association and say, this is what I believe, this is fair, or whatever, when that, I can't do that because I don't feel that's right.
Has that changed, Jason? Because couldn't they always go before and say, okay, you guys can vote on it, but I'm going to tell you. I'm just
You can make a
asking.
recommendation.
I don't know.
I was in a union for a lot of years, and normally, if we got a bad deal, we thought, they would tell us right out not to vote for it, it's a bunch of crap. You have
Maybe
the
it's
right to
changed.
take your membership.
Well, that's was our interpretation of what we asked that, and that's
Right.
what they.
You don't necessarily have to like what we did or whatever, but you can take that to your members and let them decide.
And I think as a negotiating team, we were speaking for those members in essence, that it was not even close to what we had talked about prior to that. So why bring something to other members that they're not interested in? It just feels like
And
it's
that's
extra
what
time.
your unison person.
She was there. She was part of
I
it.
remember people coming and saying, this is terrible, I don't think you should vote for it. They could have changed.
I think from the union leadership's position, you're at some risk to not getting 1%. That's my opinion.
We also need to make a stand, if we stand and say we don't agree with this, we're making a stand. Whatever you do, if you implement, that's your choice, and I guess we're willing to risk it. The increase that we would have, I guess that's what we're willing to stand on. And if people don't like it, then they can bring that up at a meeting and they can voice that opinion.
So I think a direction, whether the board is willing to guide Mr. or Attorney Gill on how that letter should go, may be appropriate here, if we wait till the 27th to give that direction and need time to think about it or process it, that would be the next step, so what the direction. the
I
board
guess
wants to go.
I would like to see either the board agrees to implement the 1% without agreement from the other side, or the board agrees to not implement the 1% because there's no agreement from the other side in 2 weeks. That's my thing.
But I don't know why the letter couldn't be written, the formal letter couldn't be written now, saying, this is our understanding.
Okay.
That be aware that the board may or may not vote for it.
So I could ask Gil on this other conversation, if he can present the letter to the union leadership that there's a vote in 2 weeks, or on whatever the date is, the 27th, that may be 1% implemented or 0 implemented. Unless you agree to 1%, then you're assured the 1%. I think that's my understanding of this.
We're not doing it.
Well,
We're not doing it. That's a waste of money. know, they already know.
Right.
Well, they know
They were
because
told.
they're
There needed to be
sitting
a
here.
letter.
Right.
But those
Yeah.
two might
That
not.
was-
Right there, and you know, this item. I know it's all legal, like, and whatever, saying, okay, you have this all the time.
Just out of the courtesy, you wrote the letter. I don't.
I think it's gonna be, because it's, I think because of the bargaining. You have to bargain in good faith.
So, is there major downsides to deciding implement 0 or implement 1% in 2 weeks?
I don't think any of us are going anywhere too
So,
quick.
that would be my suggestion, is that it's on the agenda in 2 weeks. Anybody have a different opinion?
And that the board makes a recommendation at that time then, as to
How
what they
many
recommend.
days did the union have to get back to us? Is that the 20 days?
20 days from the letter.
It's 20 days from when Attorney Gill would put it forward to the union, I'm assuming.
Right, I think the legal opinion was gonna refer